Greetings, dear listeners. Gather close for a tale from a time when decorum danced with delirium. Tonight, I invite you to drift with me into the curious corridors of Victorian England, a place where stiff collars and polite smiles concealed a world far stranger than the history books usually admit. This was an age that prided itself on propriety, yet beneath the lace and velvet, there pulsed a fascination with peculiar remedies, tonics, and elixirs that promised vigor, virtue, and occasionally visions of grandeur. Imagine a society where every ailment seemed curable, not with quiet rest or moderation, but with a generous sprinkle of an invigorating powder stirred into nearly everything. Tea, toffee, toothpaste, even the remedies for fatigue or heartbreak. As you listen, I invite you to become part of this little gathering, as though we were all sitting together in some cozy parlor with the fire gently crackling. Tell me, where are you tonight, and what hour chimes on your clock as this story finds you? There's something comforting about knowing that scattered across the globe, others are settling in at the very same moment, ready to drift away on the same river of words. Whether you are listening in the hush of midnight, the gentle quiet of early dawn, or the soft drowsiness of evening, you and I now share this moment. This story is just one chapter in a larger collection, a series of wanderings through the eccentricities of the Victorian world. They are tales stitched together with equal parts truth and absurdity, where history often winks at us from behind the velvet curtain. If such whimsical journeys delight you, if you find yourself soothed by the thought of drifting into sleep with history's strangest comforts whispered to you, then I warmly invite you to return again. There will always be more of these tales of polite pandemonium waiting for you, but for now, let us dim the lights of the modern world. Pull the blankets a little closer. Let your breath slow, your mind grow softer at the edges, and step with me into a realm where elegance and excess walked arm in arm as natural companions. Picture it. The cobblestone streets shimmering faintly with lantern light, the air carrying both the weight of coal smoke and the sweetness of fresh pastries. Behind curtained windows, families sit with postures rigid and teacups dainty, their conversations measured. Yet on those same tables sit little bottles and curious vials, promising miraculous cures. It was a time when appearances were everything, but behind those appearances was a steady hum of nervous energy, fueled by powders and potions far stronger than the polite world would ever admit. So let us begin, not with a grand monarch or a momentous war, but with something far more human, far more familiar, the weary sigh of someone who has simply had a long day. Tonight, our companion on this peculiar journey will be a woman named Eliza. She is not extraordinary in the way history often defines it. No crown upon her head, no army at her command. She is simply a Victorian woman returning home after an afternoon spent navigating endless obligations, exhausting conversations, and the quiet suffocation of polite society. Her boots are heavy, her gloves slightly askew, and though she wears her composure like every other proper lady, inside she aches for relief. The world demands that she remain graceful, but her heart longs for comfort, for something to ease the relentless pace of her day. And as the lamps flicker in the evening gloom, she steps toward the warm glow of a chemist's shop, where glass bottles line the shelves like jewels, and the promise of relief shimmers just within reach. It is here, among powders and potions, that her story begins, with a simple request for solace, and the first taste of a tonic that will change the course of her night in ways both wondrous and absurd. Eliza trudges home, her boots heavy from a morning of dodging Mrs. Haverford's endless opinions on lace. Each step feels like a sigh stitched into leather. Her gloves cling damply to her fingers, and her hat leans precariously after a near duel with a gust of wind. The day has been long, too long, and she carries its weight like an overstuffed carpet bag that refuses to close. It began with tea, as so many disasters do. A careless tilt of the wrist sent a stream of hot liquid cascading down her skirt, leaving both her fabric and dignity steeped. She attempted a graceful recovery, only to be met with Uncle Percival's thundering lecture on posture, complete with demonstrations better suited to a military parade. As if this weren't trial enough, A treacherous hook on her petticoat snapped during a polite bow, setting off a chain reaction that left her attire sighing at its own rebellion. By late afternoon, her patience, much like her hemline, was fraying. She turns a corner, eyes heavy, and spots a warm glow spilling from the windows of Finch Co., purveyor of remedies, tonics, and rational marvels. The doorbell jingles as she enters, and the air greets her with a curious blend of citrus peel and dried lavender. Shelves rise like orderly soldiers, lined with bottles in every hue, each promising relief, vigor, or at the very least, distraction. "Ah, Miss Eliza," Mr. Finch greets, bowing slightly, spectacles catching the light. "You appear fatigued. May I prescribe a cordial, freshly recommended by a bishop, a novelist, and a particularly spry governess who swears it carried her through 2 thunderstorms and a scandal about pudding?" Eliza cannot help but smile, though her shoulders slump. "Something that forgives tea stains and posture lectures would do." "Then I have just the thing." From a polished shelf, he draws a slender vial. The liquid inside gleams a ruby red, fizzing faintly as if eager to escape. He pours a modest glass and slides it toward her with ceremony. A restorative cordial, equal parts calm and vigor. Eliza raises the glass, hesitates, then sips. The flavor is soft, sweet, with an undercurrent she cannot name, like honey laced with a secret. "Honey with a whisper of mischief," she murmurs, surprised by her own description. The second sip smooths the ache from her brow, unraveling the tight knot of fatigue coiled in her chest. Her back straightens without effort, her breath flows lighter. By the third sip, a nursery rhyme she had not thought of in years rises unbidden to her lips, and she hums it under her breath, tapping her fingers against the glass in time. Her gaze wanders to the shop's velvet curtains. "Too solemn," she mutters, tilting her head. "They would be happier in stripes." The thought seems perfectly sensible, perhaps even necessary. "Merely botanical extracts, madam, to lift the spirit," Mr. Finch says smoothly, polishing the counter as though nothing were amiss. Eliza turns to him, eyes bright now, almost feverishly curious. "Botanical, like daisies?" He pauses, then winks, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Something far more spirited." Her heart flutters in response. Not quite anxiety, not quite exhilaration, but something between. A gentle tremor that insists she is alive, alert, and perhaps capable of rearranging her entire parlor before supper. The fatigue that had clung to her all day has dissolved, replaced by a lively warmth thrumming in her veins. She sets the empty glass down slowly, fingers lingering on the rim. Whatever lay hidden in that cordial has swept her into a brighter current, carrying her toward revelations she could not yet name. And as Mr. Finch reaches for another jar, its label discreet but glimmering with promise, Eliza leans forward, ready to learn where such peculiar vigor truly begins. Mr. Finch sets the empty glass aside, his fingers brushing the polished rim as if sealing a pact. Eliza leans forward, her eyes bright, her cheeks faintly flushed. "What is it truly?" she asks. "What makes this cordial fizz not only in the glass, but in the mind?" He lowers his voice, the way a man does when speaking of something both respectable and scandalous. "A lively essence, madam, from leaves that cross oceans. South American in origin. They carry the sun in their veins and a whisper of storms in their stems. When coaxed correctly, they lend vigor to the weary and eloquence to the tongue." Eliza blinks, considering. "So this is what makes my nursery rhymes resurface and my curtains beg for stripes?" "Indeed, though you are hardly the first to be so invigorated." He gestures toward a framed sketch on the wall, a stern-faced man with a military sash askew, quill in hand, and a half-empty glass by his elbow. "Dr. Cornelius Vance," Mr. Finch explains, "a soldier once until war left him with too many memories and far too much laudanum. Laudanum, you see, made men quiet when they longed to be loud, and made nights heavy when they longed for flight. Vance, desperate for remedy, turned from the opium bottle to his chemist's bench, and there he began to experiment with leaves brought from Peru. Eliza tilts her head. "Leaves that carry the sun," she repeats, savoring the poetry of it. Yes, but he did not invent from thin air. He borrowed inspiration from across the channel. The French, always a step ahead in their enthusiasm for both wine and eccentricity, had already created a mixture. Claret wine and Peruvian leaves married together in a ruby potion beloved by poets, painters, and rather surprisingly, pontiffs. "Pontiffs?" Eliza gasps, nearly laughing. "Indeed. One pope, in fact, presented the concoction's creator with a Medal of Honor, claiming it brought vigor to prayer and cheer to the spirit. Imagine a congregation so lively the angels had to hush them." Eliza imagines and giggles, her hand pressed to her lips. "So, my cordial is descended from holy wine?" "In a sense, yes. But when temperance arrived in our own streets, wagging its righteous finger and forbidding alcohol, Dr. Vance adapted. Out went the claret. In came syrup and bubbles, chosen to soothe the moralists while preserving the thrill. He named it a temperance tonic, perfectly proper for parlor tables, and perfectly improper in effect." Eliza lifts her brows, amused. "So this is virtue in a glass?" "Virtue with a kick, madam," Mr. Finch replies, bowing slightly. Her laugh escapes in a bright ribbon of sound, and she places a hand on her chest as though her own heart has surprised her. Already her thoughts tumble faster than her lips can manage. Perhaps she ought to write a novel. No, 2 novels, one tragic and one comedic. Or perhaps she ought to challenge her neighbor to a duel over his scandalous shrubbery, which has encroached an inch too far into her view. The possibilities multiply like rabbits in a meadow, each one more absurd and delightful than the last. Her fingers tap restlessly against the counter, drumming out a rhythm to match the quickened beat of her thoughts. Mr. Finch observes with the calm of a man who has seen many customers reach this precise altitude of enthusiasm. With a practiced smile, he reaches beneath the counter and produces another bottle. Its glass glows a deeper ruby than the first, its label gilded and ornate. "This, madam," he says softly, "comes with endorsements not only from the learned, but from the devout, the artistic, and the theatrical. A cordial both exalted and extravagant." Eliza's eyes widen, jittery curiosity sparking brighter still. The first tonic had opened the door. This promised to fling it wide. She straightens, hands eager, and whispers, "Pour me a little." Mr. Finch lifts a bottle from the shelf with the reverence of a priest unveiling a relic. Its glass gleams deep crimson, and the label curls in golden script. Cardinal's Nectar. At the bottom are endorsements printed proudly. One from a cardinal with an expansive signature, another from a playwright notorious for his scandalous comedies, and yet another from a famed illusionist who once vanished a horse during a dinner party. Eliza's breath catches at the sight. "A holy man, a dramatist, and a conjurer," she murmurs. "It sounds less like a drink and more like the beginning of a joke. Or the start of an evening you won't soon forget," Mr. Finch replies smoothly, pouring a generous splash into her glass. She lifts it, inhaling. The scent is rich, velvety, daring. The first sip rolls across her tongue like plums steeped in courage, warm and almost defiant. It seeps into her chest and spreads outward, as though her very ribs have been lined with velvet. Her shoulders square, her chin rises, and a sudden declaration stirs at the back of her throat. The second sip follows swiftly. Now her heart beats in hexameter, and she turns to the nearest candelabra with fiery purpose. "O steadfast flame," she proclaims, arms spread wide. "Thou burnest brighter than Lady Haverford's opinions, and twice as useful." The candles flicker obligingly, though it might only be a draught. By the third sip, she is striding across the shop as if it were a stage, plotting to redesign the entire town square. We'll tear down that dreadful fountain shaped like Neptune's elbow, she insists, and replace it with something noble. Perhaps an obelisk of gratitude, or a statue of me holding an umbrella with panache. Mr. Finch folds his hands behind his back, amusement tucked into the corners of his smile. Ambitious, he says. But perhaps begin with reorganizing the parish library. It's less costly and far less damp. She pauses only long enough to grin. Why stop at shelves of sermons when I could lead a regiment? She cries, pacing with the air of a general awaiting her drum corps. The bottle gleams on the counter, and Finch, ever the guide, leans in to provide its history. This blend, madam, was conceived by a Parisian apothecary who believed wine was too humble a companion for such leaves. He took fine Bordeaux, married it to these stimulating gifts of the Andes, and declared it a draught to elevate the soul and silence all doubt. Poets swore it sharpened their pens. Priests claimed it widened their prayers, and illusionists, well, you see what happened to the horse. Eliza laughs until she hiccups, then presses her trembling hands against the counter. Ideas tumble faster than she can contain them. Her fingers twitch as though eager to knit something monumental, perhaps a tapestry of the Prime Minister's face, outlined in bold stitches of destiny. Her reflection glimmers faintly in a mirrored cabinet, cheeks flushed, eyes sparkling like gaslight on crystal. This nectar, she whispers to herself, makes the world seem far too small for my intentions. Mr. Finch nods gravely, though his lips twitch at her fervor. Then perhaps the world requires something sturdier to keep pace with you. He reaches beneath the counter once more, producing a small glass vial filled with pale tablets stamped with tiny lightning bolts. The label reads, "For heroic endurance." Eliza stares at them, her pulse already drumming with anticipation. Heroic, she repeats, savoring the word as though it might march her into history. Mr. Finch presents the vial with a flourish, as though he were unveiling treasure looted from a dragon's cave. Inside, chalky white tablets glimmer faintly, each embossed with a tiny lightning bolt. The label proclaims them Trekker's tablets, for explorers, errands, and exceptional feats of endurance. For explorers? Eliza asks, tilting the vial so the tablets clink against the glass. For anyone braving snowstorms, mountains, Mr. Finch replies, or the milliner's shop on discount day, very popular with Arctic adventurers, and I dare say the occasional housemaid on laundry day. The promise is irresistible. Eliza tips one into her palm and swallows it with a dainty sip of water. Nothing happens, at least not immediately. Impatient, she takes another. Within moments, warmth gathers in her chest, then rockets through her limbs like a comet trapped in her veins. Her fingers tap against the counter, her feet itch to march. I must go, she declares, eyes gleaming. Go where, madam? The market, she says with grave conviction, to buy thread and perhaps redefine my destiny. She bursts into the street with the force of a cavalry charge. The cobblestones click beneath her boots in perfect rhythm, as though the entire city has consented to accompany her. By the time she reaches the market square, her breath is light, her thoughts fierce, and her sense of purpose uncontainable. The stalls groan under pyramids of vegetables and baskets of fruit. Eliza claps her hands once, sharply. Order, she cries, and descends upon the produce. Carrots, beets, and radishes are promptly rearranged into a spectrum, each shade lined in obedient rows. Cabbages march into formation. The tomatoes, unruly at first, are disciplined into a pleasing gradient from pale blush to triumphant crimson. A fishmonger watches in astonishment as she seizes a haddock, holds it aloft and declares, You, sir, are a symbol of perseverance. Swim bravely against mediocrity. She lectures his stall for several minutes on ambition, while the haddock stares glassy-eyed and the fishmonger nods politely, unsure if he is being blessed or condemned. Eliza's gaze then falls upon a stray dog nosing at a basket of pears. She kneels, her skirts sweeping the cobbles. Comrade, she whispers solemnly, would you care to join me on an expedition to the South Pole? We require loyalty, endurance, and someone to carry the biscuits. The dog barks once, and trots away. Eliza rises undeterred. He considers the offer. Vendors exchange bewildered glances. A kindly woman selling ribbons ventures closer. "Madam, are you well?" Eliza straightens, fire in her eyes, cheeks flushed with purpose. "I," she proclaims, "am a tempest of wellness." The market stalls tremble under the weight of her certainty. She strides onward, a banner of invisible triumph trailing behind her, scattering bewilderment and admiration alike. For nearly an hour, she moves through the marketplace like a comet, reordering goods, rallying strangers, and speaking passionately about destiny, as though thread and turnips were instruments of empire. At last, her energy begins to thin into restless sparks. She walks home briskly, the streets blurring past, her mind still buzzing with heroic visions of conquest and curtains. By the time she reaches her own door, her gloves are askew, her bonnet tilted, and her hair carrying the faint scent of celery from an overzealous produce reorganization. She pauses at her threshold, chest heaving, exhilaration ebbing into a jittery hum. With sudden clarity, she notices her mouth feels dry, her tongue heavy, her teeth neglected. A scandal, surely. After all, one cannot conquer the world, or even the parlor if one's breath betrays cabbage. Eliza squares her shoulders, pushes open the door, and resolves that before any further adventures, she must attend to her hygiene. A morning ritual awaits, one certain to prove as stimulating as any expedition to the ends of the earth. Eliza wakes on the rug of her sitting room, the tassels of the carpet tangled in her hair, her boots pointing in opposite directions like quarrelsome children. The gas light has long since gone out, and the only sound is the faint tick of the mantel clock, which seems to be laughing at her. She blinks groggily, a half-memory bubbling up of having shouted at a lamppost for insufficient bravery. The lamppost, she recalls dimly, had no response, which she took as insolence. Her head throbs like a timpani struck by an overzealous conductor. Her tongue feels foreign, heavy, furry, an artifact misplaced in her own mouth. She touches her lips and whispers, horrified. It feels like a neglected attic. Something must be done urgently, or the day will collapse before it begins. With unsteady determination, she stumbles toward the washstand, where a slender vial glints in the morning light. Its label, Dawn's Vigor Rinse, promises freshness, clarity, and a cheerful countenance at breakfast. She uncorks it, and a sharp, minty aroma surges out, stinging her eyes and promising absolution. She pours a measure onto her toothbrush and sets to work. The first swipe across her teeth ignites a shock of cold fire, making her eyes water. The second stroke sends a tingling chorus racing along her gums. By the third, her mouth is alive with music, every nerve buzzing. She pauses, foam spilling at the corners of her lips, and gasps in wonder. My gums. They are singing an anthem of renewal. Victorian physicians, she recalls, or perhaps Mr. Finch once boasted, praised these rinses as the ultimate banisher of morning malaise. Articles claimed they could smooth away foul breath, enliven the tongue, and even coax civility from the most recalcitrant houseguest. Medical journals went further, recommending them for unruly tongues and spirits inclined to gloom at dawn. Eliza, froth still foaming, nods vigorously at the wisdom of these doctors, certain she is partaking in a ritual both noble and necessary. Her energy multiplies with each motion of the brush. The bathroom seems brighter, sharper, as though reality itself has polished its spectacles. She spits, rinses, and stares at herself in the mirror. Her cheeks glow, her lips twitch with giddy triumph. She plants her hands on the washstand and declares boldly, "This bathroom is a sanctuary of triumph." Her reflection startles at the volume. For a fleeting moment, she wonders whether mirrors have souls that can be startled, but the thought is swept away as her attention ricochets toward the towel hook. It sits smugly on the wall, brass dulled by neglect. With a determined sniff, she seizes a rag and polishes it to a high shine, muttering through clenched, dazzling teeth, "My teeth could lead a choir." The towel hook gleams, the toothbrush quivers in her grip like a baton. She paces the tiles, humming hymns of victory between swishes of rinse, her body vibrating with fresh purpose. The clarity is almost obsessive, a kind of manic cleanliness that convinces her the entire house must be scrubbed, alphabetized, and possibly baptized. But then, as she steadies herself before the mirror once more, the triumph falters. Her mouth sparkles, her gums fairly glow, yet something about her face displeases her. Her gaze sharpens. Her eyelashes, so short, so uninspired, droop like reluctant understudies at a grand performance. She leans closer, eyes narrowing, heart quickening once again. "You," she whispers to the lashes, "are unworthy of this symphony." A bold idea unfurls in her mind, daring and dangerous, one that no toothbrush could deliver. Her gaze drifts toward the small vial of tincture left idling by the combs, and her fingers twitch as if reaching for destiny. Eliza leans closer to the mirror, nose nearly touching the glass, her breath fogging a thin halo around her reflection. Her teeth gleam with evangelical clarity, her gums still humming their anthem, but her triumph collapses when her gaze falls upon her eyelashes. They droop, short and hesitant, more suited to a schoolgirl reciting lessons than to a woman of destiny. "Uninspired," she hisses, tugging at the corner of her eye. "These are not lashes fit for a heroine. These are the blinks of a librarian afraid to disturb the dust." She steps back, folds her arms, and considers them again. No, this will not do. Her blinks must command attention, demand notice, stir whispers. She recalls Mr. Finch's sly aside the previous week, mentioned as casually as a weather forecast. A numbing tincture, madam, a dab upon the eyelids, and the enhancement proceeds without discomfort. Very fashionable in Paris, very invigorating. At the time, Eliza had dismissed it as salon gossip. Now, however, the words return with the weight of prophecy. She rummages through her vanity until her fingers close around a slim bottle labeled Narine's Numbing Tincture. Its liquid a pale shimmer. The cork pops and the scent wafts up, sharp, medicinal, with a hint of daring. She applies it carefully, brushing the cool solution across her eyelids. Almost instantly, the skin prickles, then fades into a strange and blissful numbness. Her nerves, silenced, allow her hands to move with the confidence of an artist. From her sewing kit, she draws a needle and a length of horsehair, black and glossy. She threads it with a determination that makes her pulse quicken. "I am not a woman," she whispers, steadying her hand. "I am a sculptor of my own face." The first stitch is clumsy, a tug at the corner of her lid that makes her eye water, though she feels no pain. The second finds its mark, and soon she is lost to the rhythm. Pierce, pull, knot, admire. The horsehair arcs upward in improbable curves, defiant, audacious. She blinks experimentally. One lash salutes, another leans rakishly toward the east. Her reflection, though uneven, radiates a strange magnificence. In Victorian salons, such procedures were whispered about with equal parts envy and horror. Advertisements promised allure without vulgarity, assuring women that their glances could smolder without the indignity of paint or powder. Ladies with names like Madame Claudine or Miss Evangeline performed the enhancements, needles flashing in parlors scented with violets and morphine. To Eliza, that world of daring elegance now belongs to her. She sets the needle down and tilts her head, assessing the effect. The lashes are imperfect, but bold, every blink like a semaphore signaling destiny. She gasps softly, claps her hands once, and declares, "I am a vision." The door creaks, and Mr. Finch steps inside with his usual calm gravity. He regards her handiwork, the lashes stitched like black banners across her lids, and nods. "Madam," he says with a trace of solemn admiration, "your eyes could start a revolution." Eliza's lips curve into a triumphant smile. "They will." She straightens her bodice, ignoring the faint tickle of horsehair against her brow. There is no time to linger. The day presses on. She is late for Lady Penworth's garden party, where tepid lemonade and tedious conversation await. But Eliza is no longer the weary woman who trudged home yesterday. She is magnificent, stitched together with nerve and audacity. She reaches for her reticule, plucks from it a small tin labeled nasal refresher for hay fever and fatigue, and inhales briskly. A rush clears her sinuses, sharp as a northern wind. She exhales, shoulders squared, lashes fluttering like banners in a storm, and steps out the door to conquer the garden with a single glance. The garden party unfolds beneath a polite sky, its pale clouds hanging like lace doilies over the trimmed hedges. Ladies in pastel gowns drift across the lawn with parasols bobbing, their laughter as delicate as porcelain. At the center of it all stands Lady Penworth, a woman who has made monologues her empire. Eliza, lashes fluttering like restless banners, endures the latest installment, a lengthy tale about a footstool that, according to Lady Penworth, is haunted by her late husband's sighs. Eliza nods at the right moments, though her patience begins to fray. The sun presses down, the tea is tepid, and the haunted footstool refuses to reach its climax. She excuses herself with a gracious smile and slips behind a shrub, skirts rustling, bonnet tilting like a conspirator. From her reticule she retrieves the small tin of nasal tonic, its label promising relief from hay fever, ennui, and the rigors of prolonged social exposure. She opens it with reverence and inhales deeply. The sensation is immediate, a lightning-bright sting that surges through her sinuses, clearing cobwebs that had lurked since infancy. She straightens, eyes watering, chest expanding. Her breath fills her body with such force she feels she might lift from the earth. "A cathedral of breath," she whispers, marveling. In truth, cocaine snuffs were common companions at such gatherings. Victorian advertisements extolled their virtues for hay fever, colds, and general malaise. Choirs praised them for sharpening voices, clerks for steadying nerves. What better tool for endurance when trapped in conversation about a haunted piece of furniture? Eliza now joins their ranks, a devotee reborn in the shrubbery. She emerges from her leafy sanctuary transformed. Her back straighter, her eyes brighter, she strides into the circle of guests. Lady Penworth resumes her monologue, this time about a silver ladle, but Eliza interrupts, voice clear and ringing. "Ladies and gentlemen, allow me a brief dissertation on the aesthetics of teaspoons." A hush falls. Even the string quartet falters. Eliza lifts a spoon from a nearby saucer, holding it aloft like a relic. "Observe the curvature, elegant yet humble. Too often dismissed, the teaspoon is the very backbone of civilization. Without it, tea descends into chaos, sugar into anarchy." Her words tumble with fervor, her lashes quivering with every blink. Gasps ripple through the party. One young man claps uncertainly. Another lady dabs her eyes with a handkerchief as if moved by revelation. The footstool anecdote is forgotten, swept aside by Eliza's gleaming sermon on cutlery. Lady Penworth stammers, flustered. "Remarkable. Simply remarkable." Eliza bows slightly, eyes glinting with manic conviction. "My thoughts," she declares, "are a public service." The applause spreads in hesitant waves, not unanimous but undeniable. Eliza basks in it, flushed with triumph, convinced she has elevated the garden party into a symposium of progress. The spoons on the tea table glimmer approvingly, or so she chooses to believe. As the chatter resumes, Mr. Finch appears at her side as discreetly as a butler in a dream. He holds a small case, opening it just enough for her to glimpse the glass syringe within, filled with a pale liquid that glows faintly in the afternoon light. "For deeper restoration, madam," he murmurs, his tone both soothing and persuasive. Eliza's heart races anew. The nasal tonic has made her a cathedral of breath. Perhaps this new marvel will make her a fortress of brilliance. She takes one last victorious look at the assembled guests, then turns to Finch, her decision already forming like lightning on her tongue. The carriage ride home from Lady Penworth's party is a blur of lace and exhaustion. Eliza slumps against the cushions, her lashes drooping despite their stitched bravado, her mind muddled from too much conversation about curtain fringes with her cousin Mildred. The debate, tassels versus pleats, had drained her spirit more than any battlefield could. By the time she stumbles through her own front door, she feels hollowed, as if her bones themselves have grown weary of propriety. Mr. Finch waits in the parlor, as composed as ever, his spectacles glinting in the lamplight. He studies her posture, her faltering steps, and gives a small, knowing nod. From a polished case he produces a syringe, its glass barrel gleaming, its liquid a pale gold that seems to shimmer even in shadow. "Vital essence," he announces, as though presenting a relic. "For clarity. For conquest." Eliza sways toward him, her fatigue collapsing into fascination. The sight of the syringe stirs something almost sacred in her chest. She extends her arm with the solemnity of a knight offering a sword. Finch rolls back her sleeve and administers the injection with practiced ease. The needle pricks, the liquid enters, and the world changes. The effect is instant, incandescent. Energy bursts through her veins, electrifying her limbs. Her breath deepens, her spine straightens, her eyes widen until the parlor itself seems to bow in recognition. She grips the armrest of her chair, laughing softly. "I feel like a lighthouse powered by lightning." The words echo, half astonishment, half hymn. Victorian medicine adored injections, believing them the pinnacle of modern science. Pamphlets promised cures for melancholy, indigestion, neuralgia, and even the intolerable affliction of overlong sermons. Doctors praised the directness, the purity, the thrill of delivering salvation straight into the blood. Eliza, trembling with exaltation, now understands. This is no mere remedy. It is revelation. She leaps to her feet, vitality thrumming. The parlor, once shabby and ordinary, demands transformation. She drags the settee 3 feet to the left, declares the rug unworthy of its position, and flings the curtains open to let in starlight. Each adjustment feels like rewriting the laws of domestic order. Seized by poetic fervor, she snatches a pen and dashes off a sonnet to her teapot. "O stalwart vessel of steaming truth," she writes, ink splattering in her haste. "You cradle leaves and pour out eternity." The teapot, squat and unassuming, gleams smugly in response. Her energy refuses to rest. She rifles through old letters and finds one from childhood, the ink scrawled by a friend who once betrayed her over a stolen skipping rope. With trembling grace, she holds it to her heart and declares, "I forgive you, Harriet, you and your rope." The burden of decades dissolves in an instant. Mr. Finch, arms crossed, observes her whirlwind with the patience of a man accustomed to miracles on demand. "Feeling revived, madam?" he asks, voice mild. Eliza spins toward him, her cheeks flushed, her eyes blazing. She throws her arms wide, a prophet in her own parlor. "Revived? No, Mr. Finch. I am the revival." The room seems to hum in agreement, each object basking in her radiance. Yet as her gaze lifts to the mirror above the mantel, her triumph falters. Her hair, once curled with hopeful ambition, now droops tiredly, its volume defeated. The glory of her soul cannot shine through a crown so lackluster. She gasps, horrified at the betrayal. "My hair," she whispers, "is a tragedy." Mr. Finch follows her gaze, nodding sagely. "Then it is time, madam, for a tonic designed not for the spirit, but for the scalp." Eliza stands before the mantel mirror, her reflection glowing with the lingering brilliance of the injection, only to be betrayed by the limp collapse of her hair. Her curls sag toward her shoulders, wilting like overworked bureaucrats leaning on their desks, quills abandoned. She lifts a strand with 2 fingers and lets it fall back with a sigh. "Defeated," she murmurs, horrified. "My crown has abdicated." Mr. Finch, ever ready, produces a tall green bottle from his case. Its label reads in bold copperplate, "Dr. Vellum's Follicle Fortifier, for liveliness loft and lasting supremacy." The liquid inside glows faintly, its aroma sharp and invigorating, a mingling of mint and something far more dangerous. Eliza uncorks it with trembling hands, the scent rushing out like a dare. "Mint and mayhem," she breathes, already entranced. With a dramatic tilt of the bottle, she pours a measure into her palm, and massages it into her scalp. The effect is immediate and electric. A tingle races across her head, sharp as sparks from a forge. It spreads in waves, tickling, jolting, until her entire scalp hums like a telegraph line in a storm. Her hair responds as though commanded by unseen forces. Strands rise, roots stiffen, curls gather in bold defiance. Within moments, her head resembles a field of soldiers standing at full salute, disciplined and unstoppable. She gasps at the transformation, half in awe, half in delirium. "It lives!" she cries, grasping her brush and setting to work with furious strokes. Each pull of the bristles crackles with static, sparks leaping in the dim parlor light. The sound is a chorus, an anthem of combs and conquest. Victorian advertisements had once promised exactly this: hair tonics infused with exotic stimulants, assuring social supremacy through superior follicles. Pamphlets claimed women with lively locks commanded respect, invitations, and even advantageous marriages. Eliza, brushing faster and faster, believes it utterly. She can feel the power emanating from each curl, her ambition rising with her volume. She tosses her head, the hair bouncing like triumphant banners. "My curls could govern," she declares, voice ringing through the room. "They could rewrite policy, enforce treaties, inspire revolutions." Mr. Finch inclines his head with genuine solemnity. "Your scalp is a national treasure." Eliza meets her reflection, eyes shining with conviction, and nods. And it knows it. Her hair now stands magnificent, larger than fashion, bolder than reason. She parades across the parlor, curls swaying with authority, trailing invisible decrees. She pauses at the window to admire her silhouette against the moonlight, imagining crowds cheering as her locks ripple like a flag of destiny. But triumph, she realizes, comes with its own tremors. The vitality coursing through her scalp spills into her nerves, leaving her trembling, restless, half mad with exuberance. She clutches the back of a chair to steady herself, her breath sharp and uneven. "Too much," she whispers. "Too glorious." Mr. Finch, calm as ever, steps closer, producing yet another vial from his endless supply. This one glimmers pale and soothing, its label promising serenity rather than conquest. "For the nerves, madam," he says gently. "A cordial to balance the brilliance." Eliza's hands still, her lashes flutter, her curls bristle with grandeur. She nods once, slowly, then reaches out. The time has come to temper her storm, to soothe the blaze, with a sip of something designed for composure. Eliza storms through her parlor with the fury of a general who has just been slighted by his own troops. The carpet muffles her footsteps, but her skirts swish like banners of war. She glares at the cushions on her sofa, which lean lazily against one another as though conspiring. "Offended by cushions," she mutters, shoving one aside with a sharp jab. "Too complacent, too smug, stuffed with mediocrity." Her hair, still magnificent from Dr. Vellum's tonic, trembles with every step, as though her curls themselves are impatient for revolution. She clutches her fan, snaps it open, and waves it like a scepter at the chandelier. "You hang there," she hisses, dripping with crystals, as if liberty were merely a trick of the light. "I will not be mocked by ornaments." Sensing the crisis, Mr. Finch produces yet another vial, this one slimmer, darker, its label embossed in silver. "Lady Vesper's Composure. Cordial, for emotional grandeur and poise." He pours a measure into a glass, the liquid smooth and inviting, its scent a hushed promise. Eliza seizes it without ceremony and drinks. The taste blooms on her tongue, soft, rich, steady. "Like courage wrapped in velvet," she whispers, shivering as the warmth spreads through her chest. Her agitation melts, reshaped into a grander purpose. Her spine straightens, her chin lifts, and her eyes blaze not with irritation now but with command. Almost immediately the effects declare themselves. She stands beneath the chandelier, arms raised, delivering a lecture on liberty, her voice echoing off the walls. You may hang above me glittering, but I am the light, I am the spark, and I will not dim for etiquette. Her teacups lined obediently on the sideboard become her next audience. She lifts two in her hands, studying their plain porcelain faces. You, sir, she says to one, shall be valor. She turns to the other with a solemn nod. And you, defiance. Together, we shall drink not tea, but triumph. In truth, Victorian nerve tonics were marketed precisely for such emotional turbulence. Advertisements targeted women, warning of wild femininity and the dangers of nerves ungoverned. The remedies promised composure, balance, and a return to respectable poise, all while laced with narcotics that left users flushed with both calm and peculiar grandeur. Eliza, glass in hand, embodies every advertisement's wildest claim. Her outburst crescendos as she circles the room. She spreads her arms wide, addressing sofa, rug, and chandelier alike. This house is no longer mere furniture and fabric. It is a republic of my will. I govern with velvet and lightning. These walls answer to me alone. At that moment, her maid appears timidly in the doorway, carrying a tray. Madam, she ventures, shall I bring tea? Eliza turns, lashes flashing, her teacup still in hand like sacred relics. She narrows her eyes and declares with devastating finality, tea is beneath me now. The maid blinks, bows quickly, and retreats without a sound. Eliza places valor and defiance back upon the sideboard, satisfied with their new identities. Her parlor hums with her presence, every object subdued beneath her declaration. But as her exaltation ebbs, another need rises within her. She feels the weight of her grandeur pressing heavy against her skin, as though her very pores cry out for renewal. With deliberate calm, she lifts her chin and announces, I shall bathe, and I shall emerge reborn. Mr. Finch inclines his head, already producing a bar of soap wrapped in gilt paper, its fragrance promising not merely cleanliness, but revelation. Eliza takes it with reverence. The time has come to step from the republic of her parlor into a sanctuary of steam and suds. Eliza sweeps into her bathing chamber with the solemn air of a pilgrim entering a shrine. The frenzy of the parlor fades behind her. Here the tiled walls echo with stillness. She draws the bath, turning the taps until water rushes and swirls like a miniature sea summoned at her command. Steam begins to rise, curling around her face, softening her sharp triumphs into dreamy reverence. From her side table she retrieves a parcel, neatly wrapped in gilt paper. She tears it open with ceremony, unveiling a bar of soap stamped with elegant lettering. Professor Luminous's Cocoa Soap, for clarity, courage, and complexion. She lifts it to her nose, inhaling deeply. The scent is a curious blend. Lavender, sweet and calming, braided with something fiercer, the rich undertone of cocoa that smells like ambition itself. Lavender and ambition, she breathes, already certain she holds divinity in her hands. She lowers herself into the warm bath, the soap clasped like a relic. As the water envelops her, she begins to lather. The suds rise quickly, frothy and abundant, clinging to her arms, her shoulders, her throat. A shiver courses through her. Her skin tingles, then shimmers, until it feels as though every inch of her body has become a stained glass panel. She stares down at her arms, glistening in the lamplight, and gasps. I glow, she whispers, like a cathedral window. Victorian advertisements had promised precisely such wonders. Cocaine soaps, with their bold claims of spiritual cleansing, were marketed not merely as hygiene, but as sanctification. Pamphlets suggested they could wash away gloom, restore virtue, and align one's spirit with the divine. Eliza, soaking in a froth of bubbles, believes every word. The effects deepen as the water embraces her. Her knees begin to murmur softly, reciting half-forgotten verses from childhood hymns. Her elbows hum with steady purpose, as though tuning themselves for some cosmic performance. Her shoulders relax until they feel feather-light, prepared to bear not burdens but banners. She closes her eyes and tilts her head back against the porcelain rim. in the hush of the chamber, with only the gurgle of water and the hymn of her own knees, she feels herself dissolving into something higher, greater. The bubbles cling around her like worshippers gathering at an altar. She stares into the rippling surface and sees her reflection shimmering between suds and steam. "I am," she breathes, her voice trembling with awe. "A masterpiece of bubbles." At that moment, the door creaks open, and Mr. Finch appears, ever discreet, ever solemn. He carries a small parcel of additional bars, stacked neatly in his hands. "For your radiance," he says, bowing slightly. Eliza does not flinch at the intrusion. Instead, she nods with regal calm, her lashes dripping with beads of foam. "I am radiance," she replies, and the words echo in the tiled chamber as though the water itself agrees. The bath lingers until the steam fades, until her skin gleams with renewed purpose. At last, she rises from the water, wrapping herself in a towel as though it were royal robes. The bubbles slide reluctantly away, bowing in farewell. She steps to her vanity, her face glowing but not yet perfected. In the mirror, she sees a trace of weariness still lingering at the edges of her cheeks. Resolute, she reaches for a small jar resting nearby, a cream said to transform complexion into command. Tonight, her skin will not only shine, it will dominate. Eliza emerges from her bath, wrapped in a robe that feels more like regalia than terry cloth. Her skin glows faintly from the suds of Professor Luminous's cocoa soap. Yet when she approaches the vanity, the mirror delivers an unwelcome truth. Her complexion, though flushed with warmth, seems faintly weary, the glow lacking the sharpness of command. "Tired," she murmurs, touching her cheek with the tip of one damp finger. A queen cannot look tired. A vision cannot fade. She opens the drawer of her vanity with a flourish and retrieves a porcelain jar trimmed in gilt. The label, written in swooping script, reads, "Madame Aurora's Radiance Balm, for youth, power, and social invincibility." The cream within is pale and pearly, its fragrance immediately rising into the air, roses laced with something darker, sharper, like rebellion itself. Eliza inhales deeply. "Roses and rebellion," she says, already entranced. Scooping a dollop onto her fingertips, she smooths it across her face. The texture is silken, the coolness spreading quickly before it warms into a tingling heat. Within seconds, her skin begins to buzz, alive as if every pore has been handed a manifesto to sign. Her cheeks flush, her brow tightens, and her jawline sharpens with startling vigor. She leans closer to the mirror and gasps. "My jaw," she whispers reverently, "declares war on mediocrity." The transformation builds with each passing moment. Her temples glow as though lit from within. Her cheekbones, once modest, now gleam with authority. She tilts her head this way and that, marveling at her reflection. "You could topple empires," she tells the woman in the glass. "With a glance, you could unseat kings." In the broader world, creams such as these were the pride of Victorian cosmetic cabinets. Advertisements promised not merely smoother skin but restored youth, renewed virtue, and what one pamphlet boldly called social invincibility. Cocaine-infused formulas were whispered about in salons and praised in society columns, lauded for granting women the radiance of myth, as though Helen of Troy herself might rise again in a London drawing room. Eliza, her face now glowing with mythic intensity, believes every word. She steps back, surveying her entire figure. The tired woman who entered the bath is gone. Before her now stands a conqueror in velvet slippers, a heroine of drawing rooms and garden parties alike. She raises her chin, testing the sharpness of her new profile against the lamplight. Yes. This is no mere face. It is a standard, a declaration, a revolution framed in bone and skin. At that moment, Mr. Finch enters, ever punctual, ever composed. He takes one look at her glowing visage and gives a solemn nod. "Madam," he says, voice low and reverent, "your face is a manifesto." Eliza's lips curve into a smile, calm and unshakable. "And it's binding," she replies, her voice resonant with finality. The mirror seems to bow, the room itself acknowledging her ascendancy. She feels it in her pulse, in her breath, in the hum that lingers beneath her skin. She is no longer merely Eliza, weary from obligations. She is Eliza the Radiant, ruler of parlors, conqueror of glances, mistress of her own myth. But just as triumph settles, another temptation stirs. On the table nearby rests a small box, its lid embossed with golden violets. Within lies a confection said to blend sweetness with power, indulgence with revelation. Eliza turns toward it, her hunger not for food but for further conquest. The promise of chocolate, dark, rich, and laced with euphoria, beckons her closer. Mr. Finch produces a small lacquered box, polished to a shine that mirrors the lamplight. He opens it with the solemnity of a priest unveiling a relic. Inside rest neat rows of truffles, their surfaces dusted with cocoa so fine they look like they have been kissed by midnight. He selects one between thumb and forefinger and offers it to Eliza. Madame Dulce's Vitality Bonbon, he intones, laced with sweet vigor. Eliza accepts with trembling hands, her eyes wide as though he has offered her a crown. She holds the truffle aloft for a moment, admiring its modest size, its deceptive simplicity. Then she bites. The taste floods her tongue. Floral and rich, violets steeped in cream, underpinned by something sharper, something triumphant. Violets and victory, she murmurs, her pupils widening as the flavor unfurls into fire. The effect is swift and decadent. Her senses ignite, every nerve alive, every thought radiant. She spins toward her bookshelf, seized by sudden purpose. The volumes once arranged by author now offend her. Order by mood, she declares, seizing an armful. Comedies are grouped together like boisterous cousins, tragedies slotted by shades of despair, and poetry aligned along gradients of longing. She stands back to admire her new system and claps with delight. But the bonbon has only begun its work. Her hand snatches a pen, and she scribbles furiously upon scrap paper. Lines form, rhymes surge, and soon she has composed a ballad, an ode, no less, to her favorite silver spoon. "O steadfast bearer of sugar and solace," she writes, "you stir not merely cups, but the very soul of mankind." She reads it aloud, her voice trembling with emotion, and bows to the spoon resting innocently on the table. "You have been immortalized," she whispers. In truth, such chocolates were once sold as tonic confections, marketed for mental clarity and ladylike vigor. Society women praised them for their refinement, while advertisements promised they would soothe nerves, sharpen wit, and lend grace to conversation. Few doubted their magic, fewer still resisted the indulgence. Eliza, trembling with delight, has now become their perfect disciple. She turns back to Finch, her eyes glittering. "I am confection and conquest," she announces, raising her half-eaten truffle like a torch. Mr. Finch bows his head slightly, though the corner of his lips twitch. A dangerous blend. Her laughter peals through the room, giddy and triumphant. Overcome with generosity, she sets about arranging an impromptu tea party. Chairs are angled politely toward one another, cushions are plumped with ceremony. The sofa is addressed as Madame Hostess, while the ottoman is granted the title of distinguished guest. She pours invisible tea into empty cups, distributing them with theatrical grace. "To friendship, to spoons, to bonbons," she toasts, her curls bouncing with authority. For a moment, the parlor is transformed into a salon of delight, where furniture listens raptly and Eliza presides like a queen of velvet and sugar. But the revelry falters. A sharp pain strikes her suddenly, low and unyielding, breaking through the haze of confectionery triumph. She winces, clutching her side, her smile twisting into a grimace. "A betrayal," she gasps, from within. Mr. Finch, ever prepared, reaches calmly for another bottle, a lady's elixir, its label promising fortitude and relief. Eliza's eyes narrow on it, her laughter fading into determination. If her own body dares to challenge her, she will meet it with defiance in liquid form. Eliza staggers back from her imaginary tea party, clutching her side as though struck. The laughter dies in her throat, replaced by a grimace. A cramp seizes her with brutal suddenness, sharp and merciless, as if a piano had been dropped squarely onto her resolve. She gasps, pressing a hand against her corset, the pain radiating through her like a mutinous drumbeat. "Treachery," she whispers, nearly doubled over. "From within my very ranks." The parlor, moments ago alive with bonbon-fueled delight, now seems hostile. Cushions leer smugly, the ottoman refuses sympathy, and even valor and defiance, her christened teacups, stare impassively. She stumbles to her vanity, fingers fumbling through the collection of vials until one falls into her grasp. The label gleams in gold script, Dr. Vellum's Feminine Fortitude Tonic, for agonies of the monthly sort. She uncorks it, and at once a sharp aroma floods the air. Eucalyptus, bracing and cold, with a deeper undertone of defiance. Eliza inhales greedily. "Eucalyptus and defiance," she says through clenched teeth. "If I am to be betrayed by my own organs, then let them know rebellion has an antidote." She tips the bottle and drinks. The liquid slides across her tongue, cool and commanding, before sinking into her chest with a heat that spreads quickly through her body. The pain stirs, protests, but then falters. Slowly, stubbornly, it retreats, like a scolded guest shuffled out of a drawing room. Eliza straightens, her face softening, her breath no longer a battle. Relief washes over her in triumphant waves. Victorian advertisements had once flooded newspapers with similar promises. Tonics like these claim to soothe monthly unrest, female weakness, and the nebulous afflictions of hysteria. They came fortified with cocaine, alcohol, and bravado, offering not just comfort but confidence, packaging empowerment in liquid form. To women who were told their bodies were unruly, these bottles promised dominion. Eliza, her hands steady once more, now feels herself crowned anew. She steps to her mirror, posture regal, cheeks flushed with victory. With a theatrical sweep of her skirt, she dips into a curtsy, eyes locked on her reflection. "My organs salute me," she proclaims. The words echo through the parlor with such conviction that even the sofa seems to shuffle respectfully. Mr. Finch, appearing at her side as though summoned by triumph itself, regards her solemnly. "Pain banished?" he asks. She lifts her chin, eyes blazing with certainty. "Banished and exiled," she declares, "never again to darken my threshold." The room feels lighter, brighter, conquered. Eliza paces in slow, measured steps, relishing her restored sovereignty. The tonic bottle gleams on the vanity, its contents promising continued dominion, should her body dare rise against her again. She flicks her curls back and smiles, a queen assured of her supremacy over both parlors and physiology. Yet just as calm settles, another sound slices through the air. From beyond the parlor door comes a piercing cry, thin, desperate, relentless. A child. Eliza stiffens, the triumph of her organs briefly overshadowed by the demands of another's. The cry grows louder, filling the house like a banshee in bloomers. She sighs, rolling her eyes heavenward. "And now," she mutters, "a new rebellion to quell." Mr. Finch produces yet another vial, this one smaller, its label promising quiet essence for infants and the inconsolable. Eliza raises her brows, intrigued, her lips curling into a smile. "Very well," she says, squaring her shoulders. "Let us see if silence can be bottled." The cries echo through the hall with the persistence of cannon fire. Eliza winces, clutching her temples, her curls quivering from the force of the sound. Her young nephew, deposited into her care for the afternoon, wails with unrelenting vigor. He thrashes in his cradle, fists balled, face scarlet, every breath fueling the next scream. "A banshee in bloomers," Eliza mutters, pacing back and forth. She has sung lullabies, offered rattles, even attempted a dramatic recitation of poetry, but nothing can pierce the storm. Mr. Finch, calm as a saint in the face of chaos, produces a small bottle from his satchel. The glass catches the light, its label neat and promising. Mrs. Primrose's quiet essence, for the relief of teething temper and tears. Eliza seizes it with desperation bordering on reverence. She pulls the cork, and a sickly sweet aroma fills the room, honey laced with something sharper, more commanding. She dips a spoon into the syrup and administers it carefully, tilting it into the child's screaming mouth. For a heartbeat, nothing changes. The shriek rises, hovers, then falters. His fists unclench. His eyes, still wet with tears, glaze over slightly as he swallows. Within moments, the banshee dwindles into silence. Eliza leans over the cradle, astonished. The child stares up at her, calm now, not drowsy exactly, but oddly contemplative. His wide eyes fix on the ceiling as if considering the architecture of the universe. His tiny lips purse as though preparing to dictate a philosophical treatise. The transformation is uncanny, miraculous, almost holy. In truth, such syrups were staples of Victorian nurseries. Marketed for colic, teething, and tantrums, they promised harried parents peace. Labels boasted of restorative calm, though in truth the quiet often came from narcotics, tucked into the sweetness. Many an infant, silenced into stillness, paid dearly later. But in parlors across England, such bottles were treated as salvation. Eliza, basking in the hush, does not ponder the hidden dangers. She leans against the cradle, hands clasped, and exhales with near religious relief. Silence, she whispers, is my new deity. The maid peeks in cautiously, holding her apron to her chest. He's quiet? She asks, eyes wide, as if silence itself might be fragile. Eliza turns to her with a slow, triumphant smile. He's practically a scholar. She gestures toward the infant, who continues to gaze upward with unnerving intensity, as though debating metaphysics with the plaster ceiling. The maid nods, astonished, and retreats without further question. Eliza remains by the cradle, savoring the calm that has settled like fine dust over the room. For the first time that day, the air is still, the house serene, the atmosphere thick not with wails but with peace. She closes her eyes, lips curling into a smile, her chest rising and falling with steady breaths. But serenity does not linger long in Eliza's world. The quiet tempts her into indulgence, her nerves still humming faintly from triumph and exhaustion alike. A thought enters her mind, seductive and soothing. Cocoa. A cup of warmth, of comfort, of rest. Surely that at least will ease her into gentle repose after such trials. As if reading her mind, Mr. Finch presents a tin labeled Mr. Ember's Vital Cocoa, for comfort, clarity, and nightly ease. Eliza's eyes gleam. She imagines steam rising, her hands wrapped around porcelain, serenity deepened by sweetness. She cannot know yet that the cup promises not rest, but fire. Eliza cradles the porcelain cup between her hands, sighing as the steam curls upward in fragrant spirals. The household has finally fallen silent, the child subdued in his cradle, the furniture at rest after their earlier symposium, even the cushions resigned to their fate. What she longs for now is not conquest, nor lecture, nor revolution, but simple peace. Mr. Ember's tin had promised as much. Vital cocoa, for comfort, clarity, and nightly ease. She raises the cup to her lips with the reverence of a pilgrim at a sacred spring. The first sip is thick and sweet, coating her tongue with indulgence. The flavor blooms, molasses, deep and smoky, tangled with something brighter, stranger. She blinks, startled by the richness. Molasses and miracles, she murmurs, eyes half closed. She waits for the promised calm to descend, for her body to sink into the warmth of the drink. Instead, a spark flickers in her chest. It flares into a steady flame, then roars into an inferno of energy. Her limbs tingle, her thoughts leap, her pulse thrums as though it is impatient with ordinary rhythm. She gasps, staring at the cup as if it has betrayed her. "This is not serenity," she whispers. "This is combustion." Her body demands action. She rushes to the pantry, throwing open its doors, surveying jars and tins with critical fury. "Chaos!" she cries, appalled. Jams sit beside spices, flour looms over tea, beans fraternize with biscuits. Unacceptable. She begins hauling items out, rearranging with manic precision, savories here, sweets there, herbs in ascending order of philosophical depth. Within minutes, the shelves resemble not a pantry, but a manifesto. The energy builds, spilling into her limbs. She twirls in the kitchen, skirts swirling, inventing a dance of sharp turns and exaggerated flourishes. Each stomp is a declaration, each spin a proclamation. She names the dance the Cocoa Revolt, certain it will sweep ballrooms by year's end. Her frenzy finds another outlet when she confronts the parlor lamp. Its steady glow offends her suddenly. She plants her hands on her hips and addresses it sternly. Light without conscience is tyranny. What is illumination, lamp, without ethics? She leans closer, her reflection quivering in the glass chimney. Do you brighten the world, or blind it with indifference? The lamp, steady and silent, refuses to answer, which only strengthens her argument. Victorian medicinal cocoas were indeed marketed with lofty promises. Pamphlets boasted they could sharpen thought, invigorate spirits, and provide mental clarity when ordinary drinks only dulled. Few mentioned the hidden stimulant laced within, a powder imported from distant shores. For many, the cocoa offered not rest, but restless brilliance, precisely the state in which Eliza now thrives. She paces her parlor like a commander reviewing troops, her curls bouncing with static energy. At last she halts, lifting her cup for a final sip. "I am the knight's commander," she declares, her voice ringing with certainty. From the shadows, Mr. Finch smirks faintly, bowing just enough to acknowledge her new dominion. "And its architect," he murmurs. Hours pass, though Eliza feels no weight of time. The clock strikes 1, then 2, then 3, each chime ignored. She sits at her desk, quill scratching furiously across the page. Not letters, not lists, but the outline of her memoir. The life and triumphs of Eliza, ruler of knights, arbiter of spoons. The ink smears as she writes faster, mind ablaze, eyes refusing to close. Still, even as brilliance burns within her, she feels a tickle in her nose, an irritation from dust and exhaustion. She pauses, sniffing, and looks toward the small tin Finch now places gently on the desk. The label reads, Dr. Thorne's Nasal Liberator. Relief, and perhaps more, awaits. The dawn finds Eliza in her garden, her curls still defiant, her eyes red-rimmed from the night's cocoa-fueled conquest. She had written until the candles surrendered to daylight, and now, in a burst of resolve, she seeks solace among the roses. Yet tranquility betrays her. Pollen thickens the air, and hay fever ambushes her without mercy. She doubles over with a sneeze so violent it startles a sparrow from the hedge. Another follows, ragged and mournful, like a poet forced to recite his own bad reviews. "I sneeze," she declares between gasps, "like a poet with regrets." Her nostrils flare. Her lace handkerchief is damp with defeat. Just as despair threatens, she recalls the tin Mr. Finch had pressed upon her desk before dawn. She fumbles in her reticule and retrieves it, Dr. Thorne's Nasal Liberator, for vigor, clarity, and the restoration of noble airways. She pops the lid, revealing a fine white powder that gleams in the morning light like sacred dust. She pinches a measure and inhales sharply. The sting is immediate, sharp as frost, searing her passages with a bracing clarity. She gasps, eyes watering, and then, transformation. The congestion dissolves, the sneezes vanish, her breath flows freely, vast and clean. She stands straighter, her chest expanding as if she might swallow the whole sky. "I am," she whispers, exultant, a prophet of pollen. The garden shimmers around her. Roses no longer leer with pollen-laden malice. They nod respectfully, their petals solemn with purpose. She strides to one particularly lush bloom, leans close, and addresses it in a ringing voice. You are not mere ornament. You are destiny wrapped in velvet. Do not wilt. Conquer. The rose, motionless but radiant, seems to heed her command. Seized with inspiration, she kneels in the soil, heedless of her gown, and begins to scrawl lines into the dirt with a stick. Words pour from her in fevered bursts, half poem, half proclamation, verses on air, freedom, and the moral duties of dandelions. Each stroke digs deeper until her garden path resembles scripture written by an impatient deity. Victorian society had eagerly embraced such snuffs, praising their ability to banish congestion, sharpen thought, and invigorate the spirit. Advertisements claimed clerks could double their output, choirs could sing without strain, and scholars could summon clarity in the dustiest of libraries. Eliza, kneeling among roses, is their perfect illustration. Nose freed, mind unleashed, convinced she communes with truths no ordinary lungs could breathe. Her fervor attracts attention. A gardener, hat in hand, approaches cautiously. Madam, he ventures, eyeing the dirt-scrawled stanzas. Are you, well? Eliza rises, dirt smudged on her skirt, eyes blazing with inspiration. She lifts her chin, her lashes trembling like banners in the morning breeze. I, she proclaims with solemn grandeur, am the breeze's muse. The gardener stares, then nods slowly, retreating with the wary respect one grants a monarch mid-vision. Eliza remains, triumphant, inhaling deeply as if the air itself sings her praises. But triumph gives way to vanity. As she turns back toward the house, the sunlight catches her reflection in the garden glass, and she notices her skin. Beneath the glow of grandeur, her complexion looks weary, dulled by sleepless brilliance and dusty exertion. She frowns, touching her cheek. The revelation is immediate. Her skin must rise to meet her spirit. A vial awaits, toner for bold beauty. Eliza returns indoors, the garden still humming in her memory with pollen, poetry, and prophecy. Yet as she passes a gilt-framed mirror in the hall, she halts abruptly. Her reflection startles her. The brilliance she feels, the grandeur that rang in her words to roses, does not shine as brightly on her face. The skin looks weary, dulled, smudged with the faint residue of soil. Her cheeks, though flushed with fervor, sag ever so slightly under the weight of exhaustion. She leans closer, horrified. This is not the complexion of a muse, she whispers. This is the complexion of a clerk. Determined, she sweeps to her vanity. From among the arsenal of jars and bottles, she selects one tall vial, its glass tinted a soft shade of lavender. The label reads in elegant script, Madame Celeste's Skin Vindicator, for radiance, youth, and defiance. Eliza uncaps it, inhaling a fragrance that dances between rosewater and lightning. She pours a measure onto a cotton square and presses it to her cheek. The sensation is immediate and electric. A sharp chill spreads across her skin, followed by a creeping warmth that blossoms into tingles. Her face begins to buzz, as if a hidden orchestra has struck its first note beneath her flesh. The music swells, violins in her temples, cellos in her jawline, trumpets blazing across her cheekbones. She gasps, clutching the vanity for balance. Like a symphony played on my cheeks. Her reflection changes before her eyes. The dullness evaporates, replaced by a lustrous sheen. Her skin tightens, smooths, glows as though lit from within. Lines vanish like cowards retreating from battle. Each pore seems to gleam with audacity. She tilts her head, marveling at her own metamorphosis. I am, she tells the mirror, her voice trembling with awe, a canvas of glory. The claim is not unfounded in her time. Victorian toners promised precisely such results. Advertisements declared they could restore youthful fire, banish fatigue, and cloak their users in defiant allure. These concoctions, laced with stimulants, did more than cleanse. They awakened, electrified, and convinced. Women were urged to view their complexions not merely as surfaces, but as battlegrounds, where youth and confidence might be won with the right elixir. Eliza, now radiant with renewed certainty, takes a step back from the mirror, her robe trailing like the mantle of a monarch. She lifts her chin and smiles, the expression sharp as a blade. Her beauty is no longer fragile, it is commanding. Her cheeks are banners, her brow a fortress, her jawline a law unto itself. It is at this moment that Mr. Finch enters, ever the witness to her metamorphoses. He regards her silently for a beat, then bows his head. "Your glow," he says solemnly, "is law." Eliza does not hesitate. She nods, her eyes gleaming with the authority of marble statues. "And I enforce it." The words reverberate through the chamber, sealing the pact between her visage and her will. She stands in stillness, her reflection bowing silently in agreement. She is not merely refreshed, she is enthroned. But as the silence stretches, another hunger rises, not of the body this time, but of the spirit. The radiance begs to be witnessed, her brilliance to be proclaimed. She feels it in her throat, her voice quivering with the urge to spill outward, to command not mirrors but people. Mr. Finch, anticipating, produces a vial labeled Professor Orville's Oratory Essence. Eliza takes it smiling. Tonight, her glow will not only shine, it will speak. The afternoon finds Eliza striding into the park, curls glinting like banners under the sun. Yet for all her radiance, a flicker of doubt gnaws at her. A small crowd has gathered near the fountain, neighbors, idlers, a cluster of curious children, waiting, expectant. They look to her as though she might speak, deliver a revelation. Her throat tightens, the weight of their stares presses heavily. For a moment, she falters, fingers twisting her handkerchief. "What if my voice cracks?" she whispers to herself. "What if I am less than my glow?" Mr. Finch, always attuned to her storms, steps closer and offers a slender vial. Its label, gilded and elaborate, reads, Professor Orville's Oratory Essence, for eloquence, confidence, and command. Eliza uncorks it with trembling fingers. The liquid within gleams like molten amber. She sips, and immediately warmth floods her chest, spreading outward until even her fingertips tingle. Her nerves dissolve, replaced by a rising certainty, as though her very ribcage has become a podium. She steps forward, her skirts brushing the grass, and lifts her chin to face the crowd. Words surge up, unstoppable. "Friends," she begins, her voice steady, rich, already magnetic. "We gather not only in this park but in the grand assembly of destiny." The listeners straighten, brows lifting. Encouraged, she presses on. "We must demand suffrage. Yes, votes for women, and better soup recipes while we're at it, for what is liberty without flavor?" Murmurs ripple through the crowd, amused, intrigued, caught by the strange but captivating rhythm of her rhetoric. Her confidence swells, each phrase pouring out with more force. She pivots effortlessly from politics to poetry, from household grievances to lofty declarations. She extols the rights of citizens and the superiority of properly buttered scones. She speaks of freedom and of cutlery, weaving spoons into metaphors for justice, forks into emblems of unity. The people, baffled yet entranced, nod and applaud at intervals. Indeed, tonics such as these had long been favored by orators and clergymen. Marketed as cures for stage fright and dullness, they promised fire in the voice, clarity in the mind, and command in the gesture. Cocaine-laced elixirs lent speakers the vigor of prophets, transforming ordinary sentiments into declarations that could stir or at least bewilder any audience. Eliza, flushed and shining, embodies every advertisement's dream. At the height of her fervor, she stretches her arms wide, voice booming across the park. "I am the voice of spoons and liberty," she cries, her curls trembling with the force of conviction. The fountain behind her seems to roar in agreement, its spray catching the sunlight like applause. A bystander, eyes wide, claps enthusiastically. "Brava!" he shouts. Eliza turns, radiant, eyes glittering with triumph. "I am just beginning," she declares, her voice low and commanding, as though promising an entire movement to follow. The crowd disperses slowly, muttering with a mixture of confusion and admiration, while Eliza stands tall, basking in her newfound power. Yet as the echoes fade, a different sensation creeps into her awareness, not the thrill of oratory, but the pang of appetite. She presses a hand to her stomach, frowning. Hunger feels like betrayal now, a weakness unfit for her stature. Sensing her shift, Mr. Finch produces yet another vial, this one slim and severe, Lady Prim's Hunger Banisher. Eliza's eyes narrow with determination. If food dares distract her from destiny, she will master it too. The park disperses behind her, applause still echoing faintly in her ears, but Eliza's triumphant stride falters as a more earthly sensation intrudes. Hunger gnaws at her with a vulgar persistence, low and insistent, as though her very stomach were staging a rebellion against her grandeur. By the time she returns to her parlor, the maid greets her with a tray and a timid smile. On it rests a golden scone, still warm, its surface gleaming with butter. Eliza stares at it as though it were an insult. "Betrayal," she whispers, pressing a hand to her corset. "Betrayed by appetite." The maid, uncertain, offers the tray closer. Eliza recoils, her curls bristling. "Remove it. I will not be conquered by crumbs." Mr. Finch, ever the savior of resolve, steps forward with a narrow vial of pale green liquid. Its label reads, "Lady Prim's Hunger Banisher, for discipline, grace, and control of the feminine form." Eliza seizes it as if it were a sword handed to her before battle. She uncorks it, inhales a scent sharp and medicinal, laced with citrus and command. Then, with defiance gleaming in her eyes, she drinks. The effect strikes swiftly. The pangs in her stomach quiet, shrinking into nothingness as though her hunger has been banished to some faraway province. Her body, freed of appetite, surges with new focus. She looks at her hands, flexes her fingers, and finds them restless not for bread, but for purpose. She marches to the dining table, where silverware lies scattered from the morning. With almost monastic fervor, she seizes a cloth and begins polishing. Each fork gleams brighter than reason. Each spoon reflects her face like a divine icon. She scrubs with the devotion of a nun, illuminating sacred manuscripts, her lips moving in silent chants of triumph. When finished, the silver glows as though it too has been baptized in her zeal. In truth, tonics such as Lady Prim's were widely sold to women in Victorian England, touted as aids for figure maintenance and refinement of appetite. Society praised slenderness as a virtue, and these mixtures promised women not merely smaller waists, but iron discipline, delivered, of course, with the secret strength of cocaine. For many, they transformed hunger into an enemy and self-denial into a kind of sainthood. Eliza, radiant and sharp-eyed, has embraced the doctrine entirely. She stands before her polished array, breath steady, hunger gone. "Food," she pronounces, voice ringing with finality, "is a distraction from destiny." The maid reappears at the doorway, hesitant once more. "Madam," she asks softly, "no lunch today?" Eliza turns, her curls blazing with certainty, her hands spread as if in benediction. "I feast on purpose," she declares. The words hang in the air like scripture, silencing all dissent. The maid bows her head, retreating with the tray, the rejected scone still steaming faintly in its shame. Eliza resumes her seat, not to dine but to plan, her mind fueled by clarity rather than crumbs. Her quill scratches across the page as she drafts manifestos, her eyes shining with ascetic triumph. She feels cleansed, untethered from base need, as though she has risen above mortal indulgence entirely. Yet as daylight fades, the fire within her begins to flicker. Exhaustion creeps in, a weary shadow whispering of rest. She stretches her arms, yawns despite herself, and for the first time in days considers surrendering to sleep. Mr. Finch is ready, of course, with yet another remedy, this one labeled Dr. Nocturne's Slumber Tonic. Eliza smiles faintly, imagining soft dreams at last. She cannot know the elixir promises not rest, but chaos. Eliza sinks into her armchair, eyelids heavy, body weary from triumphs too numerous to count. Her curls, though still grand, droop with fatigue, and her hands tremble faintly as though weighed down by invisible victories. At last, she admits what her pride has denied. She longs for sleep. Mr. Finch, ever the herald of remedies, presents a dark glass bottle with silver lettering that gleams in the lamplight. Dr. Nocturne's Slumber Tonic, for restless souls and perfect repose. She uncorks it with reverence. The scent rises, sweet with honey but edged with something sharper, a promise of surrender. She pours a measure into a crystal glass and drinks. The liquid glides across her tongue, cool and commanding, before settling into her chest like a lullaby sung by a stranger. She leans back, exhaling. "Yes," she whispers, "sleep will claim me now." But the tonic stirs oddly. Instead of pulling her down into velvet depths, it lifts her, light and eerie. She feels her body grow insubstantial, her limbs weightless. She drifts upward in her own chair, hovering just slightly above the cushion, like a ghost unwilling to depart. Yet her mind is far from still. Thoughts scatter and gather again, urgent, insistent. "I float," she murmurs, like a ghost with a to-do list. The parlor warps around her in the haze. The grandfather clock looms, its pendulum swinging with grim determination. She stares at it, tears welling in her eyes. "How brave you are," she whispers, voice cracking, "to march on through the hours, never resting, never faltering." She sobs openly, overcome by admiration for the clock's stoicism. Her quilt, lying folded at the foot of the chaise, suddenly demands her attention. She pulls it over herself and glares at its pattern of stitched flowers. "Tell me," she demands, "what is comfort, if not complicity? Do you cradle me, quilt, or do you smother me with expectation?" She pauses, waiting, nodding as if the embroidered roses have answered with profound wisdom. "Ah, yes," she replies gravely, "you are correct. Life itself is a covering both warm and suffocating." Such absurdities were not far from the truth. Victorian sleep tonics promised profound rest and tranquil dreams, blending narcotics into syrups sold as medicine. Many who sought peace found instead hallucination, agitation, or a restless clarity that mocked exhaustion. Eliza, rocking gently, embodies the chaos of these concoctions, caught between the need for rest and the mania of stimulation. Her voice grows softer, more resigned. She clutches the edge of the quilt, curls shadowing her face. "Sleep," she murmurs, "is a suggestion I reject." Her eyes flutter, heavy yet defiant. She sways in her chair, caught in a half-dream where clocks are comrades and quilts philosophers. At last, her body can fight no longer. She slumps sideways, surrendering with the drama of a cathedral collapsing stone by stone. The room falls silent. Her curls spill across the armrest, her lips part slightly, and her breath slows into fragile rhythm. Outside, the moon hangs high, watching over the collapse of her grandeur. Eliza sleeps, not peacefully, not simply, but magnificently, as though even in slumber she must remain a spectacle. Yet as her breath steadies, one truth lingers. This was no ordinary rest. It was the echo of an age that dressed delirium in velvet, sold chaos as cure, and promised serenity in every powdered dream. The tale now waits to be told, waits to be. From dawn to dusk, and well beyond into the restless hours of the night, Eliza has wandered through a carnival of remedies, each one promising relief, renewal, or radiance, and each one offering instead a kind of glorious absurdity. She polished silver with the zeal of saints, lectured chandeliers on liberty, whispered odes to spoons, and wept for the bravery of a clock. Her teeth sang, her hair plotted coups, her lashes declared revolution, and even her organs rose to salute her authority. From the first sip of fizzy cordial to the final collapse into uneasy sleep, her day has been nothing less than a pageant of powders, tonics, and tinctures. And in truth, this pageant was no fiction to the Victorians. It was their daily theater, their earnest pursuit of wellness. The 19th century embraced cocaine with unblinking enthusiasm, slipping it into tablets, chocolates, syrups, and soaps. It was hailed as a marvel, a modern miracle, a powder that promised to soothe babies, inspire poets, and restore women to docile poise or blazing confidence, whichever the moment required. Ingenious, yes. Unhinged, undeniably. The line between medicine and mania blurred so thoroughly that society toasted its delirium as though it were progress itself. For us, looking back, the spectacle invites both laughter and awe. How extraordinary that an age so rigid with etiquette and propriety should also hum so wildly with stimulants disguised as civility, where teacups hid rebellion and chocolates concealed storms, where bathwater promised transcendence and tooth rinses sang hymns to the gums. It was an era where wellness was bottled, sold, and swallowed without hesitation, and where the search for composure often led to delirium. And you, dear listeners, you've wandered with us through this peculiar world where powder fixed all, and where even exhaustion was dressed in velvet. Perhaps you've smiled at Eliza's antics or marveled at the sheer audacity of her remedies. Perhaps, as you listen now, you find yourself grateful that your nightcap is free of secret stimulants. Or perhaps you feel the faint tug of kinship with a world that believed, however mistakenly, that chaos could be conquered with chemistry. If this tale has amused you, unsettled you, or simply kept you company as sleep drifts closer, know that there are more such journeys ahead. This is but one story among many in the archive of history's eccentricities. Tales of polite pandemonium, of civility gone gloriously astray. So if your eyelids are not yet heavy, subscribe and join us again for more stories of historical havoc, told softly enough to carry you toward dreams. Now, as for Eliza, she lies at last in her parlor chair, curls splayed across the cushion, her breath steady, her cheeks still flushed with the radiance of every concoction she consumed. She glows faintly, not with health exactly, but with the audacity of a well-medicated age. Around her, the house is quiet. Even the chandelier once scolded seems to dim its light in respect. And so we leave her there, wrapped in her quilt of philosophies, adrift in a sleep that is both collapse and triumph. Rest well, dear listeners, far from powdered dreams. May your night be calm, your breath steady, and your repose untouched by the exuberant excess of the Victorians. Drift now, softly, into sleep, free of chaos, free of cures, free of Eliza's glorious tumult. The story closes, the silence begins.